Moving on, Times Now has accessed the call data records of Rhea Chakraborty that prove that she received and called more associates than Sushant Singh Rajput himself. Times Now's analysis reveals that she got more calls from her ex-manager Shruti Modi and Sushant's manager Samuel Miranda. That's the big story that we have for you at this point in time, and yet another explosive angle after telling you about the missing pages in Sushant Singh Rajput's diary. We will be going across to my colleagues tracking the story very, very closely. Meghna, in fact, will be joining us in just a bit to explain to us about the number of calls, in fact, that were made by Rhea Chakraborty to people like Shruti Modi, who definitely was Rhea's ex-manager, her brother's ex-manager, and interestingly, she was Sushant Singh Rajput's former business manager as well. So more calls were made to Shruti Modi and Sushant's manager Samuel Miranda by Rhea Chakraborty than making the number of calls to Sushant Singh Rajput. So that's the big update that we have for you at this point in time. Rhea also was in touch with at least 2 top psychiatrists. That's another important update that we have for you at this point in time. And Mahesh Bhatt was also on the list of those that Rhea Chakraborty had called. This is according to the details accessed by Times Now about the call data records of Rhea Chakraborty that proves completely that she received and called more associates than Sushant Singh Rajput. Times Now's analysis also reveals that she got more calls from her ex-manager Shruti Modi. In fact, we are now going to show you exact details that we have accessed for our viewers, the call data records. We are going to show you who all were calling Rhea Chakraborty, who was she receiving calls from, and this is very, very significant because she was constantly in touch with 2 psychiatrists. That's what this is indicating, and there you have it. We want our viewers to focus on this call data record sheet that Times Now has access, in which you can clearly see Indrajit Chakraborty, Shouvik Chakraborty, Shruti Modi, Samuel Miranda, and here you have the number of calls, the incoming calls. Just look at the number there. To Shruti Modi specifically, 222 incoming calls, 509 outgoing calls. Samuel Miranda, if you see, then 28 incoming calls and about 259 outgoing calls. But if you look at Sushant Singh Rajput, and this is Rhea Chakraborty's call data record, to Sushant Singh Rajput, she had made very less calls, 31, that's the number here, and outgoing calls, in fact, were around 135. And Siddharth Pitani is also there in this list. 16 calls that came from Siddharth Pitani, and outgoing were around 84. Then Dipesh Sawant also is mentioned in this list that we have access for you. And remember, most of these people, in fact, are now facing ED heat as well. We told you how Siddharth Pitani has also already been summoned by the Enforcement Directorate. Samuel Miranda has already been questioned by the Enforcement Directorate twice in the last 2 days. Siddhant, my colleague, is now joining us on the broadcast. Siddhant, give us more details. What exactly are these call data records pointing to?
Well, these call data records are the evidences that have been accessed by us, and this clearly shows that how in the month of January, Rhea was calling Sushant to come back. Now then later, there was no phone call made to Sushant, and even Sushant's number was blocked. Second, the most interesting fact that this CDR establishes is that more than Sushant, Rhea used to call Samuel Miranda and her associates, the group of people who were close to her, which includes Shruti Modi, which includes Samuel and other staff member, those who came as a replacement for the existing staff of Sushant Singh. Now the point here is that all these CDR records are the crucial evidences in the case to prove the fact that everything was not well between Rhea and Sushant. Despite that, the existing investigating teams never paid attention to these CDR records. Now these CDR records are coming to light, and family alleges that when Sushant was with them in the month of January, at that time Rhea used to call Sushant, and Rhea used to ask Sushant to return back to her, to return back home. And the time they had a breakup, right, or they got separated, there were no calls, and even Sushant got blocked also. So all these things are clearly mentioned in the CDR records. Not just that,
Siddharth, I'm just interrupting you there, requesting you to stay on with us. My colleague Meghna is also now joining us on the broadcast. Meghna, give us more details, because this is clearly raising many questions, and most of the people who are mentioned in this call data record that we have accessed have already been summoned by the Enforcement Directorate. So definitely there is a link.
Well, absolutely. Here, what we have are the call data records of Rhea. As you rightly pointed out, most of these people have already been summoned. The reason behind it, even the investigators feel that these are the people who may know something about the case, may know what may have led up the circumstances to the unfortunate death of Sushant Singh Rajput, which is why we are focusing on certain numbers. The rest of the numbers, of course, have been blurred out because there are several other calls also which were made by Rhea. But what is important, I believe we have visuals of Rhea Chakraborty also coming in that we are going to get for our viewers. These are the call records, of course, that we are showing for our viewers. Interestingly, she's made